Hello, this is an assessment of a Bechstein 7 foot 10 inches long, about 1884 or so. We can't date it accurately because we haven't got the real serial number. I'll look at that in a second, but first of all, I've left this on the piano just to show you this tool that my colleagues made for measuring grand pianos, and it's really useful because it's very hard to know where the end of the keyboard is, but with this at right angles you just put the tape measure slotted in there for where the end of the keyboard is, and then obviously stretch it out across the piano. And now it's got some very pretty trimming on it. The veneer's almost completely intact. There's a little bit there though that's damaged, as you can see. The pedals and lyre, I'm not certain those are original because very often you get lyre-shaped lyre on these very old Bechsteins, so it may not be, but they're certainly in keeping with the piano. The pedals are nice and low as you have on Bechstein, so that's really excellent. It means you can raise the piano up slightly if you need more legroom. And now looking at the piano in general, here we have that's obviously been replaced, that little, making a panel here and put Bechstein in, that's a bit small. It is commonly replaced, but as you'll see some videos of Bechsteins that we've got in stock at the moment that are fully restored of this kind of age, or in fact we have one of 1886, so it's a wonderful piano. Well, that's got a lyre-shaped pedals. Now these are ivory keys, and there's some damage to them, well, just that one really actually, so there's another one up here that's got a little chip, but we can disguise those pretty well. It's got a fretted music stand here. I'm not convinced that's original either, so it doesn't look too bad. I think if we fully restored the piano, which if we take this on we will do, we'd probably alter that and put one of the more common ones on. By the way, when there's no serial number on the piano, that's how we date it. There's a number underneath the piano. They don't completely correlate, unfortunately, with serial numbers, but I'm guessing this is 1884, 1883, that kind of age. Now, the soundboard, as you can see, splits have opened up in it, which is normal, really. What we want to find out is what the down bearing's like, whether we're going to take the piano on or not, whether it needs a new soundboard. Let's have a listen to it. Now, opening the piano up, surprisingly, it has been fully restored. These are quite big tuning pins. There's a few anomalies here. I'm pretty certain they've replaced the rest plank. They're very, very tight. My main concern here is this piano was rescued from extremely damp shed. Everything felt damp on the piano, so we got it out immediately, and it's been here a couple of months now drying out, so now we can assess it, see what kind of damage there is. That's not the... I don't know if that's the correct Bechstein. No, it's in London. That's a London Bechstein badge. So in fact, that was the one that was made in London, and that's the badge they used to put on it. Decal, we call it in the trade. Now, the good news is that all the tuning pins are really tight. They're slightly oversized tuning pins, but function really well. And the tone of the bass strings is excellent. Going through. And the hammers aren't very nice really, but we would normally fully redo one of these rather than try and work on what somebody else has done. Things like having the wrong badge on the soundboard isn't something we like to see. So there's food for thought really, isn't it? The frame is quite well resprayed actually. And the braiding around there is nice. So there's obviously taken a lot of care in many aspects. There's the blue felt here. This is quite good, really. This is what we would do. This is well, in fact, actually, the old ones had green felt, not blue felt. But Bechstein blue is common on Bechsteins. Oh, that's something. The question is, are we going to leave it or completely redo the piano? As if there's plenty of aspects that are good, then we could sell it as a piano that we haven't fully restored. Therefore, it's going to be much less expensive because it might have certain qualities to it that aren't sort of 100%, but it's still really good. Of course, we try to do the best restoration we can, and this restoration, in many aspects, seems to have been done quite well. There are some signs of repairs of cracks on the soundboard. Looking underneath it, you can see the cracks, but on the top. This has been repaired, that crack there, and maybe opening up again slightly, but not as bad as I would have expected after having been in such a damp place. I don't think it was in there for too long, so that's probably the reason. If it was there for any longer, it would have perhaps completely ruined the whole piano and need to start again, even with a new soundboard. So it's got the old original tide action. We replace the tide action normally when we fully restore. Though there's nothing wrong with the tide action, it's just that it's a nuisance to work on with these rocker system. And it really doesn't, if it's set up properly, it doesn't respond any worse than when it's changed. It feels a bit notchy when I'm playing down here. The key dip is perhaps a little bit great, but not too problematic. The hammers feel a bit heavy, so there's plenty to do. So look at these hammers here. They've been obviously replaced. I'm not sure what hammers they are, but they're quite dense. It's one of the main things you're looking at for hammers, is to, I don't get my fingernail too much into them. Up here, they've obviously been softened slightly, but not too bad. At the top though, the piano doesn't sound, I'm not impressed by the sound of the hammers, but it might just be they need toning, voicing properly. And they haven't changed the shanks here. We normally would, so that all these hinges are even. Let's have a look at the hinges. Well, they're freed up. They're free, and maybe a bit too free actually. And the rollers are changed here as well. So it's not a bad job, but they're very high off the rail, much too high off the rail for proper regulation. They should be about 4 or 5 millimeters maybe. They're probably 10 millimeters off the rail, I would say, or not far off. And inconsistent down the bottom here. They're even further off the rail, so you're not quite sure where that should be. But replace the key felts here, that's good, and the key bushings in the middle. That's a lot of work. You have to get them freed off really well to make sure they don't stick afterwards, and make sure they're not loose. So good job, very well done. And the key fronts as well, and the felts under the keys, you can see also they replaced the washer under there. So so good stuff done. You can see the lead back there, that's a bit oxidized. It's ideal if you can just lacquer over the leads to stop them oxidizing. So there's some good things to say. Hello there, that's an assessment of a Bechstein 7 foot 10 inches long. It might have been called a Model 3, certainly they were later on, and made in about 1884. And now it was in a very, very, very damp place when we found it, so we immediately got it into a dry place here in our workshop store area. And it's been restored by somebody quite well, really. The touch isn't quite right, but the many aspects of the restoration are excellent. And they're certainly just wonderful pianos, this model. We have restored this and Model 4 before, and we're really, really pleased with the pianos. The tone is very lush, but this throws up a lot of questions for us. Do we keep the restoration that's been done and look at the hammers, probably mainly the touch, because the strings seem to be pretty good. The tuning pins are very tight. It's really a question of the action, the feel of the piano, and I have to make a decision on that. Anyway, the good news is that it's not been too damaged by the damp storage, not been there for too long. Thank you very much for listening.